evening and a very warm welcome. Speaker in today's session. I welcome you, ma'am, on behalf of this institute. I warmly welcome Mohammed Tayyab Alam sir for being an invaluable support system of this program. We welcome you. As per the tradition of the institute, we will begin the session with prayer. I again welcome you, ma'am, for today's orientation lecture, and I thank you for kindly accepting our invite and agreeing to deliver a lecture on. I also would like to welcome Mohammed Tayyab Alam sir, the Communication and Documentation Officer, Morarji Desai National Institute of Yoga. Orientation lecture series. We thank you, sir, and we warmly welcome you. The speaker of the day and begin the session.
Sohini Paul, ma'am, is assistant professor, Faculty of Health and Wellness. On yoga through the lens of physiology and biomechanics. Dr. Sohini Paul, ma'am's core area revolves around biomechanics, ergonomics, and physiology. In 2000, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, ma'am has published several with teaching and a research experience of around 15 years. She is a lifetime member of many professional bodies. Ma'am has attended various conferences and has made several presentations in national and international conferences. She has been the supervisor for several graduate, postgraduate, and PhD students. Ma'am has published 3 book chapters under Springer Nature publication. Thank you, ma'am, for accepting our invitation for the 131st weekly Friday webinar, which is quite popular among social media friends, staff, students, and faculty of the Institute. With these few words, now I would like to invite today's esteemed speaker, respected Dr. Sohini Paul, ma'am, to elaborate on today's topic. In fact, quite excellent one, yoga through the lens of physiology and biomechanics. Ma'am.
Thank you so much, sir, for inviting me for delivering this lecture today. First of all, I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to Dr. Ishwar Basavaraddi, sir, Director, Morarji Desai National Institute of Yoga. I would also like to thank you, sir, Mohammed Tayyab Adam, Communication and Documentation Officer, Morarji Desai National Institute of Yoga, and also definitely Dr. Suman Rathore. She has been great support from the day we were just introduced and we were delivering a lecture, as well as Dr. Rameshwar Par also. I would also like to thank him for and all the others who are part and parcel of this presentation. I would like to thank them for providing me with the opportunity for delivering this lecture. Thank you. So, shall I start with the presentation now?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh. My slides are visible, ma'am?
No, ma'am. Could you please try again?
Okay, just a minute.
It's a visible, Dr. Suban. The
Okay,
presentation is visible.
okay, so maybe
Okay.
then there's some issue here. Okay, sir. Yes, it's visible here also now. Thank you.
Okay, ma'am. So, a very good evening to one and all present here. Today, I'm going to present a lecture on the. I'm going to give a lecture on the topic that is yoga through the lens of physiology and biomechanics. So, before starting, physiology and biomechanics, all these knowledge is very essential, for performing yoga because we are whatever yoga you all are doing or whatever yoga is being taught, there are various postures, there are various forms which are there for particular yoga. And to know the biomechanics of it and also the physiology of it is very essential for the proper performance as well as the proper outcome of that particular form. So the outcome of yoga can be achieved, at a greater height to a greater level by the help of a proper understanding of physiology or as well as anatomy also, because physiology and anatomy without their knowledge, biomechanics can also not be the biomechanics of it cannot be understood. So it's but today I'm restricting myself to physiology and biomechanics only, but anatomy is also very essential for this part as well. So, yoga, if we talk about, as we all know, right, it is both an art and well as a science of human beings. So, it's both an art as well as science. And in this, in this modern era, there is full of challenges and stresses. And, in a way, uh, the outcome based effort is also causing too much of a challenge as well as giving stress to an individual, and that may end up in causing many physiological, not only physiological, right now mental health is something which is so much in news as well as it's so much in research now. So that ends up in a physical as well as as psychological disturbances, and this physiological and psychological illnesses may lead to various other imbalance as well as certain other disorders. So like we all know, if we are not healthy, we don't feel nice also. So for a proper functioning of the overall health of our body, whether it's your physical health, whether it's your mental health, the performance of yoga is like it helps a lot. So, and we should also go through whichever maneuvers are there for keeping ourselves healthy as well as keeping our mental status healthy as well as your physical status healthy. So yoga, it's you all know that it is a mind body exercise which was like in developed in India, and it's like an ancient history for us, and it has gained popularity now worldwide. So this exercise, it can be characterized by slow movements with large body movements, and like when body movements can happen when participants are in a start or subjects are in a standing posture, or they are seated, or they are lying in a supine condition or prone condition. So all these postures, they are characterized by some movements, and when you are studying about movements, we can study about the biomechanics of it. So practicing yoga, it has been seen overall to increase muscle strength, joint flexibility, then the range of motion of particular joints. It also, helps to improve balance, coordination. And right now, senior elderly population, they are having so much of problem. They have a tendency to fall, and that all is, leading to your, or you can say that that all is an is related to balance disturbances. So yoga has been found to improve balance, also the coordination, because coordination part is also very important when we talk about an individual's proper functioning. Plus, it has also been seen, researchers have said that it is also helping in reducing stress as well as depression, and also reducing the pain amongst patients with various populations like osteoarthritis, to name one of them. So that is what yoga is doing for us. But despite this potential benefits of different yoga maneuvers, there are certain yoga related injuries that should also be considered. So that is where the concept of physiology, concept of anatomy, concept of biomechanics comes, because what is there is that there are these benefits of yoga maneuvers which are there, but we should also be aware of the related injuries that may also happen. And for that, the precautionary measures should also be considered for them. So there were some studies and there are many others as well, but I have just put forward few of them. So first to tell is a group of scientists, group of researchers, Fishman et al. They propose that a long-term incorrect yoga posture, it may result in low back pain and lower limb muscle as well as ligament strain. So they have, in their study, they have performed various experiments, and they have found out this. This was their finding, that a long-term incorrect posture may lead to this yogic posture may lead to low back pain, as well as some muscle strain may happen, as well as it may lead to ligament strain as well. In this connection, there is another group of scientists who have published research, Coons et al. They stated that yoga maneuvers, it may affect the alignment of lower limb joints, and that may also contribute to knee injuries. And there are numerous studies in your present literature that have explored the risk factors of yoga related injuries, and they have just related it to, it can be related to a poor yoga technique, some incorrect joint alignment, or sometimes yoga therapy is given without knowing the proper injury history. So previous injury history is also essential when we talk about these performing yoga. Plus, if suppose somebody is performing certain yoga, but that is above their capacity. So, and also, if they are performing repetitions which are more than what is required, that may also lead to some form of injuries as well. And sometimes it may also be due to some insufficient instructions from yoga instructors. That is what they were published in few research papers. So they found out these can be the major risk factors, and they explored them, and that is what they found out. So keeping this in mind, I would like to again start with the physiological aspect of this. So when we talk about the physiological aspect, as we all know that yoga, it's a science, and as well as art, definitely, but this is where we are dealing with the scientific aspect, where the physiological system as well as the mind of an human being is also involved. And although your mode of action through yogic practices affect the body mind homeostasis, it also helps in health promotion. It also helps in maybe elimination of certain diseases, but it is not clearly understood till date what is the exact mode of action. So mode of action meaning it is dealing with each, from man to molecule. So the exact mode of action, it's still not elucidated for the various yoga postures, and right now lots of researches are going on for this aspect as well. So this is one of the very important aspects of yoga. And many researchers, they have found certain from their researchers, they have found that the level of BDNF is a brain derived neurotrophic factor, and it's also somewhere related to neuroplasticity, you can say. So they have seen that the level of BDNF, or the salivary cortisol level, or pro anti-inflammatory cytokines level, and well as CAR, that is your cortisol awakening response, it has been increased by certain practices of yoga. So what happens is that if like increased level of BDNF can be linked to increased neuroplasticity, as well as if there is an increased level of CAR, that is your cortisol awakening response, it can be related to a increased level of alertness, and that in turn, you can say it can be related to the hippocampus, so that towards the brain integrity activity functioning. So overall, our hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis equilibrium, you can say it is having some role to play in this in a physiological aspect. So when we talk about this aspect, obviously our nervous system is very important. When we talk about the nervous system physiology is very important when we talk about this yoga practices. So as we all know, if we talk about physiology, it deals with various systems of our body, right? Starting from your nervous system, your respiratory system, your cardiovascular system, your musculoskeletal system. So there are so many systems in our body, even your endocrine system. So all these systems, they have different roles to play when we talk about from the physiological aspect. So one of the system is like your nervous system, if we talk about. So what happens is that one of the most important, because we know that nervous system is so much important, because our coordination, your neurons, the impulse, your reflexes, all they are very all has to happen, so that your proper functioning of human being happens. So, and all these coordination, this complex coordination, it is performed by nervous system in association with the other systems whichever is required. So nervous system, one of the most important system which is ultimately like affected by yoga in a positive manner, is your nervous system, and it controls, you know, that it's a complex coordination of the whole body which has to happen. So there has been researchers which have shown that this practice of certain deep relaxation techniques for a longer duration, it has shown to have a profound effect on your autonomic nervous system. And if we see in a nutshell, what happens is that it reduces the sympathetic activity, and it increases the parasympathetic activity via activating the medulla. And you know that it ultimately, what it does is it reduces the catabolic functions in our body by various pathways, by various intermediate reactions which happen. And you can find that there is a reduction in the catabolic functions of our body. And when that happens, what happens is that our body's oxygen consumption, it gets reduced. And in a long term, you can find that vagus activity can be activated, and by that process of activation, you can control your heart rate. Control in the sense, you can reduce your heart rate. Suppose somebody's resting heart rate is like maybe 80 beats per minute. So a long practice may help in reduction to it. So if there is a reduction in our resting heart rate, it's not obviously too much. There is a range, physiological range, where the reduction happens. So a person with a reduced heart rate, obviously in that particular range, it becomes like, if there is a reduction in heart rate, the efficiency, or you can say in a certain extent, the maximum oxygen consumption capacity, or maybe the VO2 max, you can say, it may increase for that particular person. So in that way, there is a reduction of an heart rate which may happen, but obviously a longer practice of it. It cannot be in a shorter duration. A longer time period is required. Plus, the respiratory rate can also be controlled in that way. Plus, there can be energy consumption reduction for whatever performance you are doing, and obviously there can be an increased attention. Then it promotes or improves your motor responses, your attention, your alertness. So all these, and also definitely the higher coordinated movements. So this is what your nervous system helps in do. It's affected by yoga. So definitely yoga is having a positive effect on the nervous system if practiced properly and if practiced in a good manner. So that is what is another important aspect. Now, apart from that, it also has an effect on system physiology. That is a very important part as well. I mean, all the systems are important. You just cannot say this is the only important system. All are important, because if there is not a proper functioning of your respiratory system, then what happens? Oxygen consumption will not be happening properly. There can be, there can be various levels of your uh, there can be some blockages, or there can be many other aspects which may lead to the hampering of normal functioning of breathing, and that can also lead to some many problems associated. So if we talk about respiratory system, this is the main system in our body through which the main yogic exercises are practiced, like your deep yogic breathing, for example. But this is one of the most important system that can be primarily affected in due course of time. That is what may be seen. Now, regular practice of this controlled breathing, it has resulted in increasing various respiratory parameters, like we are aware of these parameters, like our tidal volume, or your inspiratory reserve volume, the vital capacity, your breath holding time after expiration, breath holding time after inspiration. So these all are some spirometric measurements we get, and definitely, they are having a positive impact of it as well. So all these now deep inflammatory exercises, if we talk about like your pranayam, or kapalbhati, or your bhastrika, they cause consistent adaptation in the stretch receptors which are present in our lungs. So in our lungs, if we talk from the physiological aspect, there are stretch receptors which are present in our lungs, lung tissues, and uh, if there is these deep inflammatory exercises, it may cause consistent adaptation in the stretch receptors which are present in the lung tissues, and that ultimately may alter a reflex. We call it as a Herring-Brewer reflex, and that response, it helps to alter the lung function as well as the lung capacity as well. So these are some of the important aspects, which are dealt with yoga. And obviously, yoga, it has been proven by a research that yoga has a definite role to play in some chronic obstructive pulmonary diseases. So chronic obstructive pulmonary diseases like asthma. So asthmatic patients, they have shown improvement of various respiratory parameters via your yogic exercises. So definitely, yoga helps in various uh, aspects of your respiratory system. So apart from that, there are your cardiovascular system, which is also affected. So yoga has a definite role on your CVS. Consistent yogic exercises like your savasana is but there are many others. It has been shown that it reduces oxygen consumption significantly, and pranayam breathing reduces heart rate and blood pressure in the long term. It may reduce it in the long term. So here also, if we see the physiological aspect of it, so what happens is that the activity of your parasympathetic system, it increases, and sympathetic system, it is decreasing. So the vagal activity is dominated due to this, due to a positive feedback, and that positive feedback is from nucleus tractus solitarius. And this increased vagal activity, it also reduces the sympathetic overdrive. So ultimately, you can find that there is an increased release of acetylcholine, which is a neurotransmitter, over your SA node and AV node, and that may lead to a factor which may lead to the reduction of a heart rate within the acceptable range. And also there are other aspects as well, and there are evidences which has found that yoga practices, it has helped in reduction of your cardiac output, as well as, it also helps in reduction of your blood pressure, but obviously if it is performed in a long run and without any interruption in between, so that has also a positive effect. Now, musculoskeletal system is definitely another important aspect of it, because when we talk about your biomechanics, the musculoskeletal system is definitely playing an important role, and we are going to see how it is. So I'm not going to elaborate on this here. Maybe when we are talking about the biomechanics part, we will just see how it is affecting. But it is now extensively used in the field of your sports physiology, as well as in other sectors where, fitness is very much important. Also in military population and other, where fitness is considered, coordination or strength, focus, whatever it is, you can find yoga's role in it. So overall, the role of yoga is very important, and now it's practiced in a extensive way, and all over the world it's an accepted method of practice. And your if we see yoga, it mostly helps in enabling your eccentric contraction of a muscle, so to a greater length, and that also helps in a greater flexibility. So flexibility is also important, and joints strength and flexibility increasing is also important for the proper functioning of an individual for a longer period of time. So that's what your musculoskeletal systems physiology is. Plus, there is the effect of yoga on endocrine system as well. So regular yogic practice, they have a positive response in certain endocrine disorders, and it is definite effect on endocrine organs through your hypothalamic pituitary axis. So what happens is that in suppose one scenario I can give you is that for diabetic patients. So in diabetic patients, what happens? It has been found that yoga not only increases the insulin receptor sensitivity. So, in diabetic patients, there is a role of this insulin receptors sensitivity. So, your yoga, if proper yoga is done, proper yoga protocol is given, it has been seen that for after a certain period of time, the yoga is not only increasing the insulin receptor sensitivity, but at the same time it is also decreasing peripheral resistance. So, and also it has been seen that it is increasing. A group of researchers, they said that they propose that you can say it increases response of beta cells. Beta cells, they produce insulin, right? So beta cells of to increased level of glucose. So, it has been suggested, and also, your practice of yoga has also helps in controlling the waist hip circumference. Overall, you can say the leptin hormone, and also obesity. So form of activity, a physical form of activity, it is also helping in controlling obesity as well. So these were the effects of yoga in various aspects of our physiological aspects. Now comes your field of biomechanics. So biomechanics, what happens if we talk about biomechanics? Biomechanics, it is involving the structure, function, and motion of the mechanical aspects of biological systems. So that is what your biomechanics deals with. Now, apart from that, the study of the effects of internal and external forces on the human body, we also call it as your biomechanics. So what happens is that when we talk about the study of the effects of internal and external forces on the human body, so whenever we are performing any form of exercise, whenever we are performing any form of activity, what happens? There are our joints, and they are acted by some internal forces as well as by some external forces. So when we study about these forces, that is also coming under the arena of your biomechanics. Plus the mechanical principles which are applied to the study of your biological functions, that can also be regarded as your biomechanics. So in short, biomechanics, that is biology with mechanical principles. So that is what our biomechanics is. And your bones. We have so anatomy is we have knowledge about bones, we have knowledge about your joints, from your muscular aspect, from your ligaments, tendons, nerves. They all play an important role in biomechanics of our body. So that is what is very important. And obviously, the application part of mechanical laws to human body while practicing yoga posture, that is what we call it as your biomechanics of yoga. So these are the different joints I think we might be all aware of. So these are some of the joint example that yoga definitely has some role to play, because there are so many yogic postures and their effect on these joints. I hope you all are aware of it. So these are some of the movements which are related to your joints. So see, if we see the first figure, this is the triangle pose. There is elbow extension, there is shoulder abduction. So for each and every poses, if we see, there are these movements which happens around the joints. And based on these movements also, there are your muscles which are involved, and these muscles activity is also required for the proper functioning or for proper posture to happen. So see, and therefore the movements also is important. So a knowledge about the movements, a knowledge about the joints, their range of motion, the muscles which are involved, which are assisting in those movements, all are important when we talk about a particular yogic posture. So this is what are the joint movements. So muscles, we know, like there are about 640 muscles in our body, and muscles can be cardiac, smooth, and skeletal. So when we talk about biomechanics part, it's your skeletal muscles which we are concerned with, and that your muscles, they are attached to the bones and they are allowing your body to move. Now, joints, they are moving because all skeletal muscles are contracting, and that's why they are moving there. And your skeletal muscles is responsible for movement of the joints in the various asanas you are performing. So there can be different types of contraction. There can be isometric contraction. There can be, isotonic contraction, which may involve your concentric contraction and eccentric contraction. So these are the contractions part which are there. And your bones, joints, muscle, ligaments, tendons, they work together to produce the movement in our body. And for that, also, we should have some idea about the anatomical directions and planes. I think we all are aware of this. Your sagittal plane is there, your coronal plane is there, your transverse plane is there. So all these planes are important, because when we talk about a movement or your range of motion for a particular joint, these plane is very important, because when we talk about movement of a particular joint, we consider the movement of the joint from the sagittal plane perspective, from your coronal plane perspective, and also from your transverse plane perspective. So that's why the knowledge about these anatomical directions and planes is quite important in understanding the biomechanics. So see, if we talk about this particular movement, this is a movement which is considered in the frontal plane. This movement is on the sagittal plane, and this is the movement on your transverse plane. So you should understand which movement is happening, and that movement is on which particular plane. So that's why a knowledge about plane and your axis is very important when you talk about seeing postures. Okay, so this is, see, as I was telling you, there are proper functioning of your muscles, there are proper functioning of your joints happening for your particular posture. So if I talk about this particular posture, I think you all are aware of it. You can see the red part. Red part are the muscles. Red color shows the muscles which are engaged in this particular posture. Now you can see the purple color. Purple color are those muscles which are engaged when you are stretching yourself. And the blue colored muscles, they are showing that they are stretchers. So these all, for particular yogic posture, the muscles involved, they are also different. So studying each and every muscle and their activity, you can understand it's such a whole lot of work. And studying muscular activity, we can use a particular instrument. We call it as your EMG. So EMG, it's your electromyography, and by the help of EMG, we can understand the various activities of our muscles. So for each and every posture, the muscles involvement, it differs. Obviously, the joint involvement as well. So if I see now biomechanics of different muscles and the movements, it will be like huge. I will require too much of time for that, so I'll not go into all those details. But what I'll show you is, see, can you see these asanas, and you see what are the muscles which are involved. So the red denotes which are the muscles engaged, and purple denotes which are the muscles which are engaged during stretching, and the blue, it denotes which are the muscles which are helping in your stretch. So see, for each and every posture, this is the right one, right? It is your Virabhadrasana. So when you talk about this asana, you can see the muscles which are getting engaged to it. When you talk about this Padahastasana, you can see what are the muscles which are involved. So for each and every posture, the muscles involved, the joints activity, each differs. And for studying each and every posture, I'll tell you, not all have a proper literature. Proper research is still not available for all the biomechanical aspect. I'm telling you, if we biomechanics, we talk about kinematics, we talk about kinetic studies, where the forces are involved, where kinetics is something where forces, studying about forces are involved. When we talk about kinematics, it's the joints, movement, range of motion, and all these are involved. So for each and every posture, still date, you can find hardly few of the postures whose biomechanical aspects are covered. So these are some of the, if we talk about vertebral column, these are some of the asanas, and these are the muscles which are involved. So I'll not go into these details because time is quite short, and I think I need to finish it. If like we have more time, we could have discussed more in details about these asanas, and also which are the major muscles which are involved for each and everything. Because for this we have to have a knowledge about the various aspects. Like you can see, if there is, we have to understand the biomechanics of your spine, we have to understand the biomechanics of your lumbar spine, your thoracic spine. So all these biomechanics is required for understanding the soul, soul requirement for understanding or having the knowledge of your postures. Also the biomechanics of sacrum is required, and then these asanas for that. So these part I will not go into that much details. I'll just skip these part, because when you talk about biomechanics of ankle or foot is very important. So maybe I'll just tell you one or two things. So when you talk about in normal, when we talk about for a particular joint, there is some range of motion which is regarded as a normal range of motion for that particular joint. So knowing what is the basic aspect of that particular joint is very important. What are the basic range of motion, how much is the degree to which the movement can happen, all is very, suppose we talk about the shoulder joint, it is having a specific range of motion. Suppose we talk about the ankle joint, it is having a specific range of motion. So having the knowledge about the proper range of motion of the particular joint is very essential. That will help to minimize the injury in the longer run. So suppose if we talk about a normal ankle joint, there is approximately 45 degrees of your plantar flexion. So approximately 45, it may differ, plus minus little bit can be there. If we talk about dorsiflexion, it is, I don't know, like plantar flexion is like approximately 45 degrees, but if it is dorsiflexion, it is like limited to approximately 20 degrees. So dorsiflexion, it's also limited by tightness in your Achilles tendon, your gastrocnemius and soleus muscle. So you can understand, if we see the range of motion also, we can come to these aspects as well. Now the supination movement of ankle, it's quite free, and it can be overdone in poses like your Padmasana. So there are various aspects of your biomechanics of your joint, as well as your shoulder joint. If we talk about, you can see if you understand the role of your shoulder joint, biomechanics of your shoulder joint, if you understand the glenohumeral rhythm, it also helps in performing various yogic postures and a proper way. So, the glenohumeral rhythm is something which is involving your scapula, which is involving your humerus and your clavicle. So all these knowledge about, an extensive knowledge about biomechanics is very essential when you talk about the proper functioning of your muscles as well as your joints for your particular posture. So I'll not go into this. What I will do is I'll just so these pictures were taken. I have just shown these from here. Now I'll just talk about this three typical yoga maneuvers. So one is your crescent lunge pose. One second is your warrior two pose, and third it's your triangle pose. So this was performed by a group of scientists, and I'll just tell you, you might be quite surprised that they have claimed that they are the first group of researchers who have studied the kinematics and the kinetic part of these three poses. And they have just claimed it, and they have found out many parameters based on this. So, like if we talk about, they have found out what is the lower limb joint angle, they have found out. And when they have found the lower limb angle, joint angle, for these three poses, they have found that the range of motion of the yoga movements, it was like 90.5 degrees for your hip, and also like 83.3 degrees for your knee, and for your ankle it is like 48.7 degrees in the sagittal plane. And if it is like for your hip, it's like 50. So as I mentioned before also, you should be very much acquainted of the various planes which are there. So I see, again, I'm telling you, if I'm talking about the range of motion of your yoga movements for a particular plane, there is for your sagittal plane, if I tell you, it is 90-degree for the hip, right? But if we see it in a different plane, we can find that it is like around 54.8 degrees for your hip, for your 44.9 for your knees, and like 4.8 for your ankle, and that is all for in your frontal plane. Now, if we talk about analyzing these three movements, individual analysis of these three movements, they found out that the triangle pose, it is performed, when analyzing the individual yoga movement, these group of scientists, they observed that the triangle pose, when they are performing, they perform the significant and the largest range of motion of the hip, right? Of your knee and your ankle in the sagittal plane. Got it? So of these three maneuvers, and they also, therefore, what they said was that moving into the triangle pose, it is requiring most of the range of motion for all the three joints in both the planes. So it's like your frontal plane, if your sagittal plane, if you are comparing, this is what they have found. Now, in this aspect, they have also given various other data, like what will be the lower limb joint moment is something also we study. We also study about lower limb angular impulses. So all these studies they have made, and they have done it in different planes, and they have published this paper, and it is like in the 20, I think in the year 2021 they came up with this aspect, and they have claimed that they are the first who have studied the kinetics, the kinematics of these three postures. That is what they have suggested. And if I tell you in a nutshell, if I tell you like what is the take home, or you can say among these three, if we talk about what is essential or why these findings are very important. So if we see the overall finding, they suggested that this lunge and your warrior two pose, they are following similar joint angle, right? Joint angle they are following in a similar way. Joint movement is also similar. But when we talk about the triangle pose, this triangle pose obtains the largest ROM in all the joints in the sagittal and the frontal planes. Now, it has been also suggested that your triangle pose was found to be distinct from other selected other poses that we are talking of, because of the largest ROM. And it's also suggested by those group of researchers that if you are practicing the triangle pose, it is causing the knee to extend over its baseline by 9.5 degrees on an average. And it is very much very much good finding, because the increased extension has been shown to be significantly correlated with anterior cruciate ligament impingement in uninjured knees. So that is one of the very much important finding that they have proposed. And apart from that, if there is an hyperextension of the knee, it also contributed to excessive, strain on the different oblique popliteal ligament. That is what we say. So therefore, yoga experts, they have also advised that, they have also proposed that yoga experts, that it is important to avoid hyperextension and associated knee injuries during bending the knee in the triangle pose. So that is what they found out. And there were other findings as well, like, knee adduction angle. There is different movement, right? Adduction is there, abduction is there, flexion is there, extension is there. And based on that, they have given certain poses, like they found that knee joint in a triangle pose practice traveled a slight adduction of around 1.9 degree, and this showed your knee adduction. So those who are suffering from medial compartment knee osteoarthritis, they should be cautioned before pursuing the triangle yoga poses. So they have given the benefits also. They have also told like what can be done and what can be not done. And also they have also told some strategies also that are related to the balance. So this is one of the important findings that was there, and it was the biomechanics part which has helped us to understand these aspects. So with this, these are my references, and so I would like to end my talk here. And so therefore, a knowledge of physiology, anatomy, and biomechanics is essential to perform postures correctly and to avoid injuries. So with this, I'll end my lecture here, and I would like to thank you all for your patient hearing. I hope I've completed in time. So thank you all.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much for presenting such an informative and insightful lecture. So before we conclude, there are certain questions which we have received from our viewers. So I would like to put forth them. The first is, how does the practice of yoga compare to other forms of exercises in terms of their effects on our bodies? How can we compare the effect of other forms of exercises in terms of their effects on our bodies with reference to physiology and biomechanics?
Okay, so you can understand, I mean, you can see what are the effects. Like, suppose if we talk about physical activity meaning, like, if we talk about the simplest form, walking, right? So, when you walk, you can understand what are the movements which are happening. So, movements is talking about your biomechanics, the movement analysis of it. Now, when the forces which are acting in your particular joints, the muscles which are helping your body to perform those activities, whether it's your walking or you're performing certain yoga postures. So how they are helping, that is what biomechanics helps you. The study of biomechanics suggests that. And if we talk about physiological aspect, obviously, when you are walking, so walking, when we are, our respiratory rate or your CVS is not affected to that extent when when we think about a normal walk. But when we do certain brisk walk, our physiological parameters changes. So likewise, which form of yoga you are doing or which form of physical activity you are doing, the parameters also changes, and along with it, which parameters you want to evaluate to see what is the effect. So that is also changing. But overall, CVS, respiratory system, is something which at the beginning, very beginning, if you assess, that is very important. After that, your nervous system, you can go into your hormonal aspects, that is there. But overall, these are some of the parameters. If you have a basic insight into it, you can get a good result of it. I hope I have answered your question.
Okay, ma'am, there's another question in which the user wants to know the challenges that the person might face when one is planning to study the effects of yoga on body using physiology and biomechanical measures.
What are the
The-
challenges?
Yeah. What are the challenges that
Okay.
a person may face when he's trying to study the effects of yoga with
Okay. So, first and foremost challenge when we talk about is see, in India, what happens when we talk about, I'll tell you first from the biomechanics aspect, then I'll go into physiology. Because when we talk about biomechanics, we require certain instruments which are quite costly, right? When we measure the kinetics, when we want to measure the kinematics of a particular posture, we are going to measure the gait parameters. So there is a motion happening, we are measuring the movement. So for that, cameras are required, and those instruments, they are, I mean, quite costly. So first is the fund available. So if we have, so we call it as a motion analyzer system. So that, that is quite costly, and that is one of the challenge we face. Second is, of course, when if suppose we have the system. Now in India, what happens when we want to perform these activities, and also it has been seen when we want to work with female population, maybe there are certain clothing requirements which the female might not be that much comfortable to wear. So that is another one of the important, another challenge that is faced when we talk about the biomechanical aspect, maybe. And apart from that, you can say the facilities which are there to perform, we can have a range of motion by, not, it's not very costly, we can just use a goniometer by which we can see the forces which are acting on the joint. But if we want to see the overall aspect of a yogic posture, definitely I will say the funding part is quite an important challenge that is faced, because the facility is not available. It's hardly in few labs all over India where we can study the kinetics and kinematics of it. And physiological aspect, if we see again, if we talk about heart rate, or if we talk about your respiratory rate, if you want to see, spirometer is an instrument by which we can measure. But when we want to measure heart rate, like, see, we measure pulse rate. There is a difference between measuring pulse rate. There is a difference between measuring heart rate. So again, when we are measuring heart rate, there are certain specific instruments which are required, and that is also present in some highly specialized lab, or some world class athletes where they are performing there. So from the basic scenario, these are some of the challenges which we face from measuring the biomechanics and your physiological parameters. Few things can be overcome, but obviously challenges are there.
Okay. Thank you so much, ma'am, for presenting such an engaging lecture. And it was undoubtedly an imperative topic in the present times to discuss yoga and learn about yoga through the lens of physiology and biomechanics, because we want to make yoga more accessible and more acceptable to the wider range of people. So thank you again, ma'am, for taking time from your busy schedule and presenting such an engaging presentation. So we will conclude the session with Shanti Path. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. I hope it is beneficial.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. It was wonderful to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you so much.